Successor is a Chinese comedy film. This one's doing really well in China, so I wanted to check it out. It's finally reached the shores of North America, but I didn't want to watch this movie because it did really well in China, but because of the comedic powerhouse duo of Sheng Teng and Li Ma. These two they work really well together. They usually play husband and wife, and I've seen 3 of their movies. They've done Goodbye Mr. Loser, Never Say Die, and Moon Man. Moon Man being my favorite of the 3. But they usually do wacky sort of comedies that sort of have similar plots to sort of Hollywood films. If Goodbye Mr. Loser was comparable, it'd be like Peggy Sue Got Married or Hot Tub Time Machine. And Moon Man's on its own thing because it's based off of a comic, I believe. But Never Say Die is a body swapping comedy, so there's lots of those back in the day, like Freaky Friday and The Switch. So this movie, Successor, can be described as a little bit like The Truman Show. This is about Ma Chenggang. He is a billionaire. His wife, Chunlun, the 2 of them have already had a son, but he was a bit of a failure, so they wrote him off, sent him to go to school in America. And they have a second child, Nui Nui. They decide to take their child away. They don't want their second child to be ruined by the silver spoon syndrome. And Ma decides he wants to raise his child in a sort of rough environment, the same that he had when he was a child. He lived in a very poor sort of block, and he wants to transform that into a sort of training ground for his son. So this is helicopter parenting on steroids, because not only does he buy out the entire place and live there with their son, they also have outfitted the place as a high-tech sort of double lair. So there's an entire bunker underneath this little tenement square, I guess. They rename him GA, and they raise their son. However, when they go to work toiling, they're actually just not working, and they have hired a educator to pretend to be GA's grandmother, whom he loves. So he wakes up every day at the crack of dawn, does all the chores, takes care of the grandma's medicine, runs to school for 5 kilometers. So he lives a very studious, simple life. However, sometimes teachers sort of comment on how poor he is, so they try to interfere. And of course, in real life, Ma and his wife are, super wealthy. So he actually has a whole bunch of staff on retainers. So they have like a built-in mini kitchen next to their own kitchen to have chefs prepare food. Everyone that lives in the little tenement building, from the guy who owns the bookstore to the neighbors to the guy who plays piano across the street to teach them, they all are educators. They're hired. They're there as plants, basically. And he's also got a fleet of bodyguards on mopeds and bikes that follow him around to and from school to make sure, he's safe, but also to give him, math problems and help him with tutoring. So they even hired 2 fake Americans to show up and challenge him by asking him questions about English. So the majority of the first half of this movie is basically GA's life, and basically they put a lot of pressure onto this young man. They give him a lot of money and say, you manage the household now, and they're trying to train him up from the ground up to take over this company that Ma runs. And we never get to see the company or what they do. It's more about his obsession with training his son to be the best by giving him a sort of hard, childhood, so that to make him strong and not make him weak. And it doesn't really ask too many questions about the nature versus nurture sort of theme. Instead, the second half time skips to him being a little bit older. He's a little bit wiser, and GA is a little bit suspicious because he's getting like weird panic attacks because he kind of keeps seeing people following him from the corner of his eye, or he keeps seeing the neighbors being nosy, and anytime someone talks to him, they mention the university that his father wants him to go to. So it's kind of freaking him out, until we get into some situations where they can't explain themselves out, and he decides to do something a little bit more drastic to see if, there isn't an invisible force forcing him to do and controlling his fate. And the movie's ending's a little bit rushed. This movie's actually like a little over 2 hours, like 2 hours, 15 minutes, and it doesn't really try to stick the landing in terms of a good third act. It just rushes, copies the ending of The Truman Show, and gives us a little bit of a epilogue that just feels a little bit fake, and it really doesn't try to throw in too many wrenches into the plot, to be honest. They could have, they underutilize the hilarious rich grandparents. They want to always be there for their grandson and spoil him rotten, but Obviously, Ma and Junlin don't want that, so they're constantly trying to play defense, and they always have this group of bodyguards to block and play interference. And another aspect is that GA only has like one real friend who's not paid, but they control her too. So like they don't really play too much with the romance angle or anything like that. They don't throw any too many wrenches into the plot. And so the main sort of core focus is would the kid be messed up if he finds out about how his life has been sort of strictly structured a certain way, and what would happen if he finds out. And the movie just doesn't really have anything to go on in terms of theme. It does deliver some good laughs. There's some great set pieces, including a foot chase. There's the flashbacks that are funny. There's a couple of secrets almost out of the bag. Let's do something wacky. But the movie's not a laugh riot. It's more of a drama, really, about parents and the love of their children, but it doesn't really want to pose too many questions or do anything crazy. So Successor, it's a good watch. I like watching the main actor and actress do their thing, but this movie is a little bit on the shallow side, and I give Successor a 6 out of 10.